Hello, everyone, and welcome to our afternoon workshop on job applications and resumes with Lisa Yee-Litzenberg. Lisa is the president of Green Career Advisor, and she also gave the keynote address at one of our past conferences. So we are always happy to bring back our supporters and our friends in the Green Career Movement. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off now to Lisa. Take it away.
Hi, can everyone hear me, I hope? Excellent. Hi, everyone. It's a real honor to be here. As David said, my name is Lisa Yee-Litzenberg, and I'm doubly honored to be here because I'll be telling you a little bit about my background, but I used to work for National Wildlife Federation for 12 years, so love to be able to come back and contribute in another capacity. So today I'm going to be talking to you about preparing resumes and cover letters that employers notice. I know this is a very big topic that many of you who are applying to jobs and internships probably struggle with regularly. Submitting an application where you get the black hole treatment and not hearing back from employers. So what can we do? So this workshop is all about that. So I hope you'll find it very helpful. A little bit about my background. So as I mentioned, I'm president of Green Career Advisor, a small practice that I founded in 2016 to help people find and secure their dream green jobs. Just really motivated to want to help people to help people find their way in a green career, because I know it's a struggle that many of us have had, and wanting to get as many people working to protect the earth as possible. It's kind of a personal mission statement of mine. So where I started, as I mentioned before, 12 years at National Wildlife Federation in various roles. I worked on Great Lakes and wildlife conservation issues at NWF, starting off as a grassroots organizer, working on endangered species legislation, helping travel to 12 states and do presentations to college students about endangered species and how they could help. After that, I led grassroots organizing work on protecting Lake Superior biodiversity and water quality issues, and then worked as a regional organizer where I was in charge of being the liaison between 4 of the independent National Wildlife Federation state affiliates in the Midwest region to help them become more effective advocates on conservation in their states, and then also helping us on national issues as well. And so a lot of the work I did there, there were pieces of it where I was able to help young people, students, become leaders in the environmental field, working with the state affiliates and things. And that's pretty much where I developed my passion to help motivate people to be leaders in the environmental field. So after that, 10 years working at University of Michigan School for Environment and Sustainability, where I led the Graduate Environmental Career Service Office there. Basically built that career service from the ground up, and then helped thousands of students get green jobs in the field. And then moving on to Green Career Advisor, 2016, I continue to work with students, recent graduates, mid-career professionals, and even career changers. So I'm super inspired to be hearing from more and more people, I think in this pandemic, who are looking to make a career shift. Maybe that's some of you who have taken some time to reflect and wanting to do work on climate change and conservation in general. So what I'll talk to you today is kind of the agenda for today. We'll be going over some of my top 10 resume and cover letter tips. I have some great resume and cover letter tools and templates, which I hope you'll find super useful. These are tools that I developed back in the time when I worked at University of Michigan to help my students and alumni develop excellent job applications so that they would get noticed by green employers. So we'll go through all of those. And then I'll end with talking a little bit about how to leverage your network. So in addition to having an awesome resume and cover letter, being able to understand when and how to leverage your professional network in the job search is a huge piece of succeeding in your job application. So we'll talk about that. And then I hope to end with some time for question and answers from all of you. I think you can type your questions, Q&A, questions that you may have into the chat. I believe David's going to help me collect those so that at the end we can go through there and answer any of the questions that you have. So starting with some of the top tips that I have for how do you, kind of big picture, what do you do to have an effective application? It really starts with having a focused job search. So being able to, take some time to think about what are one or two roles that I feel are a real alignment, what really matches with my education, my experience, my skill sets, and what are exact job titles that I might be targeting my job search to, because I'm sure many of us have experienced this where you start to apply to a lot of different job postings. It might start off with one or two, but then maybe 5 or 10 different ones, and pretty soon you're kind of all over the place, and it becomes very challenging to customize your application, your resume, and your cover letter to each of these very different types of roles. So it's very important to take some time, number one, to really focus on what's a match for your education and skills. And in some cases, if you don't have some of those skills or education, maybe that's a time to reflect on what do I need to do to get to this career that I'm so passionate about, but maybe lacking in some areas. We can talk about that a little bit. So for example, like 2 very specific job focus areas that, like, if you thought about what you might want to do, it should be as specific as something like this. I want to do a sustainability role for an outdoor apparel company, perhaps, or I'm really looking for a communications role with an environmental NGO. So another thing to think about, like, this is a short exercise that you can do on your own that I think it can be super helpful. So reflecting on maybe 2 or 3 environmental issues that you're really passionate about, but it's not enough to just say, okay, I'm really passionate about climate change, but I've never had any coursework, or I don't really know that much about it. You're not going to get very far in your job applications. So it's very important to think about what are the environmental issues that I'm both passionate about and I have a little bit of experience in. It can be through coursework, volunteer work, it can be through school projects, jobs, etc. So just, when you get a chance, take some time to think of 2 or 3 environmental topics that you're super passionate about, but you should also be able to write in another column, what experiences do I have? So that really represents the real estate on your resume, that you have the ability to highlight some real experience that you have working on those issues. Another thing you can do is make a list of employers that work on issues that you're really passionate about and that you have experience in. So for example, let's say you're passionate about sustainable ag, sustainable food work. You might make a list of employers that work in this space as a start. And then you can be thinking, okay, what job titles do these employers hire for that really match what I can do? What are my, my skill sets, my degree, background? How do you find that? So some tips on how do you find some of these job titles. You can look at employer websites, see if they have a staff directory where you can see job titles and real people working in roles. And if some of their job titles seem really interesting, maybe look them up on LinkedIn and go look more at their background, their education, kind of the work experience they had to get to that role. Those are all good. Also, LinkedIn employer pages. So many employers have a LinkedIn page, and if you go to their page and follow their page, you can also find the number of staff who have LinkedIn profiles that work there, and then look at their profiles and really see, you might find some job titles that really resonate with you, and then dig more deeply by looking at their profiles. And then lastly, just really looking at employer job posting web pages is a great way to look for some of those job titles. Let me give you a couple examples. So let's say you have an undergraduate degree in environmental policy and you're passionate about, and you have a little bit of experience through coursework or whatever, internships on climate change. Maybe the skills that you also have are policy, you're very good with policy analysis and writing. So one example of a kind of a focus area job title that you might consider with this combination would be like a climate change policy analyst, perhaps. Another example would be, let's say you have a bachelor's degree in environmental science with a focus on environmental justice, and you're passionate about sustainable foods and social justice. And the skills that you have are community outreach and organizing. One idea for a job title could be, let's say, a food justice community organizer could be an example. So you get the idea. I wanted to throw out a couple of examples to really highlight that. A second tip would be to research some of the job postings and make sure that, so once you have an idea of a job title or two, you want to do a little bit further work to see, do I really have the qualifications, the skills, the experience needed for this job? In some cases, you might be shooting too high. Maybe there's like a more junior level title, but similar role that you could do that you'd be more qualified for. One way to do this is to take, I have a great, it's a resume customization tool, which I'll be talking about more later. You'll see where to find it. But you can take this tool and really use it also to determine whether you're qualified for some of the jobs that you're considering. So in essence, you would just, in one column of this tool, you would list the skills and experiences that are needed for this job. And the second column, you would list, do I have this skill or do I not have this skill? And if I do, which of my experiences demonstrate that skill? So very quickly, you'll be able to see where you have some gaps. And if the gaps are too big, that might mean that you're not quite there yet. You might have to do a little bit more work. In other cases, you might fit very well and then have the confidence to know that you can do this job and that you'd be competitive. Places to look for green job postings to get more of an idea and look and see if you have the background and qualifications. My greencareeradvisor.com website, there I've compiled a whole list of top 50 green job posting websites. So I hope you'll take a look at that to see a bunch of new places perhaps that you hadn't considered to look for green jobs. I've been hearing from a lot of people that remote jobs are something that everyone seems to be wanting after the pandemic, right? We've been working from home, kind of spoiled to be able to have some flexibility to do that. And so for some people, you know, really want to continue that working remotely or being able to travel and do their work. So one resource that I would encourage you to look at is flexjobs.com. It's a paid subscription, so you'll have to decide. They might have some free trials or whatever, but you could check it out to see if that resource is something that's turning out jobs that interest you. I also suggest making a list, whether it's a Google spreadsheet or an Excel spreadsheet, let's say, to make a list of employers that you're really targeting, and then links to their job posting websites so that you can easily check those once a week or however often you're looking at jobs to really look at those. Another thing, the third tip I want to share with you is that content. That is absolutely critical. Your resume can look quite lovely, but if it doesn't contain the content that the employer is looking for, you're going to get the black hole treatment. You're going to get, you'll be passed over for these positions. So employers on average, roughly, let's say they might receive 250 applications for a job posting, and it can vary quite a bit, but just let's say 250 applications. And then when you take that with the fact that some studies show that employers have this very short attention span, 7 seconds in some cases, where they take a look, you know, they're looking at, let's say, 250 applications. They don't have a lot of time to go through each one. And so 7 seconds is what they spend looking at your resume, quickly deciding, you know, is this person worth bringing in for an initial phone screening interview or not? So keep that in mind. You want to make it easier make it easy for the employer to find your relevant resume content. You do not want it to be like a hide and seek game, right? Like it's not an exercise for the employer to do the work to find what's relevant to them. You need to do that work for them. And so some of the tools I'll be talking about will really help you out here. And I often get this question, and I'm sure many of you wonder, do I really need to customize my resume and cover letter to each posting? Yes, the answer is yes. Many applicants will be doing that, not all of them, but for sure, I will tell you that an employer will know quickly if you've taken the time to do that, and you are not going to stand out if you haven't taken the time to really show them all the skills that they're looking for on your resume and in your cover letter. In some cases, you might have a whole bunch of experiences that maybe some of them aren't so relevant. What I would say for that is, in some cases, you might be able to eliminate some of them if it doesn't create too much of a time gap on your resume. Or in other cases, maybe you minimize it to one bullet instead of like putting 5 bullets for something that's not very relevant. Just leave one bullet there and maybe feature an accomplishment that you achieved, even if it's not relevant to the job you're applying for. Employers really relate to high achieving individuals. And so if you can demonstrate something cool that you did, made a process more efficient or whatever, that can be a great thing to list as your one bullet. And of course, listing your most relevant bullets first can be really important. Tip number 5, it's really important to not just highlight the skills that you have, but if possible, and you don't have to do this for everyone, but I would say show outcomes and accomplishments. You know, you've worked hard in many of these roles. If there's something cool that you achieved or delivered, say that. So for example, let's say somebody writes as a bullet, they wrote a report. Okay, that might show you have some good writing skills, but even better, be more specific. Wrote a 50-page report with recommendations on reducing energy use. 3 of my major recommendations were adopted, ultimately saving my employer 20% in energy costs annually. Much better, very specific, numbers included, and highlighting successes in an area that they're looking for. Tip number 6, we just talked a little bit about that too. Numbers wherever possible. So if you managed volunteers, was it 1 volunteer? Was it 25 volunteers? Did you raise funds? Was it $1? Was it $50,000? When you, of course, the bigger the numbers, the more impressive, but that kind of helps the employer have a sense of the scale at which you worked. Tip number 7, applicant tracking software. So some of you may have heard about this. It's something that some of the larger private sector employers use, but other sectors as well. It's, again, employers have a limited amount of time to review applications. So many of them have moved to using the software, applicant tracking software, to kind of screen the resumes before a human being even looks at any of them. So it helps them like take the first cut of, let's say, 250 applications that come in, and they might say, I want to see the top 20% of applications of resumes that I guess hit on the most number of keywords in our job posting. And to the employer, that might equate to most qualified applicants. But for others, you may be the most qualified candidate, but if you haven't put in the keywords from the job posting, you could easily get passed over. A couple quick points on that, like sometimes fancier fonts or tables can throw off the applicant tracking software. They might not be able to read it properly if you have some of your resume information in fancy tables that they can't read. If you use a different keyword, or let's say you use the acronym letters instead of the actual words, let's say GIS, right, instead of writing it out, that may get you passed up. So look carefully at the job posting and what keywords they're using, and use those exact keywords. Maybe even in, you'll see later that I suggest a skill summary section at the very top of your resume, listing all of the skills that you have that the job is requiring. So that's a great way to make sure that those keywords get listed. Tip number 8 would be to try to keep your resume and cover letters each to 1 page if possible. So employers, as I said, they're very busy. They don't have time perhaps to read lengthier cover letters for sure. And Resumes, they prefer 1 page as well, but certainly there's exceptions for resumes. There might be longer ones for federal jobs. Teaching and research positions often are a different format that require a CV, which lists, a lot of different things than a resume: research experience, publications, conferences attended, et cetera. So those CVs can be a longer format, and that's okay for those jobs, but you'll want to make sure if your resume is longer than 1 page, that it's acceptable for those types of roles. Tip number 9 is your cover letter is a place, it's different than your resume. So resume is a place to list out all of your experience and skill sets, education, etc. But it's very hard to convey a lot of other things on your resume, where your cover letter is a place where you could do that. So for example, it's hard to convey your passion for the organization or for the job itself. It maybe you've had a career change and you haven't explained it anywhere. Your cover letter could be a place to do that, so that the employer doesn't overlook you for a role because they don't understand kind of your career trajectory if you've done a lot of different things. So this kind of reiterates that last point. So using your cover letter to explain things that might not be understood by the employer, which could maybe, a lot of employers, if something doesn't make sense on the resume to them, oh, there's this big gap, I wonder what happened here, or this person has done like 5 different things, I don't understand why they want to move into this job, which is quite different from everything else. If you leave them guessing and never explain up front, often they will overlook your application and go with a simpler candidate that seems like a more of a sure bet, where they understand that person's career. So very important to have kind of an explanation in your cover letter very succinctly if you've had a career change or if you have a gap in your work history. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later in some examples, but 2 tools that you're going to use to really help you with your resume. Number 1, resume customization tool. I showed you very briefly. We'll go into more detail here, but it's like the tool that I basically developed to help my students at University of Michigan figure out how to create very customized bullets for their resume for a specific job or internship that they're applying for. So you typically would use that customization tool first, and then the template is kind of like, how do you arrange all of this? What topic areas do you have in there? So again, you can go to greencareeradvisor.com under the resources section to find that, but this is what the resume customization tool looks like. There's 3 columns. I'll go over these here. So column 1, you would list basically everything from the job posting, every skill, experience, attribute that the employer is looking for in that job posting. Column 2, you would list, okay, do I have this skill or do I not have this skill? If I have this skill, column 2 is the place where you list which of your experiences demonstrates that skill. And again, be open. It could be internships, it could be a class, it could be a student leadership role, a job, whatever. Column 3 would be the place to create strong bullets using tips I'll go over in a little bit as well. So basically you create the bullets for that skill in column 1, for that specific experience under column 2. And then what you have then is all you would do is take all the bullets from column 3 focused on one of the positions and lift those bullets and put that under the relevant position on your resume. So now what you'll have using this tool is a highly customized resume where the employer is looking and nodding their head as they look down across all of your experiences. And yes, this is exactly what we're looking for, not this hunt and find exercise where they have to look for 2 or 3 or 5 different things that don't really resonate with them to find the 1 or 2 that do. So this tool can be super helpful and make employers very excited to read your resume and will make you stand out. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're applying for a membership specialist job, let's say at National Wildlife Federation. Here are some example requirements for a this fictitious job. But let's say number 2, we'll look more closely at this. Familiarity with Razor's Edge or a similar customer relationship management software is preferred. So how would you demonstrate that? You would put that in your resume customization tool, the skill listed here, first column. Where can I demonstrate that? Let's pretend you did an internship at World Wildlife Fund, and that's the place where you can demonstrate that. And then column 3, you actually create the bullet that addresses that skill. And then now you can just lift this bullet and put it under WWF on your resume. Now, the second tool I want to go over is your resume template. So this is sort of like, what else do I put on? How do I organize my information? So I'll go through each of these sections. Your resume doesn't have to look exactly like this. This is just a model of how you could organize it that I highly recommend, especially the top half, I'll say, or the top third. So the top third we'll talk about first. We have your name and contact information up top, and you'll want this to look similar. So in your cover letter, you would want to have a similar header up top so that you kind of brand your materials and show a similar look. Right underneath that, I suggest having a targeted professional field. So you might put something like sustainability professional, or let's say sustainable agriculture professional, or whatever. You might you want to put in a title that reflects how you're marketing yourself, but of course it should align closely to the job you're applying for. But I wouldn't recommend putting the exact job title. Don't just cut and paste that job title and put it on here, or it really looks like that, right? You're just cutting and pasting the job that you're applying to. But take a little time to think about how to frame yourself that's similar to the role that you're applying for. That will be one of the first things that the employer sees. This candidate is right in the field that we're looking for. Perfect. Reading on, the next section I suggest is a skills summary right up top. I would say up to 5 lines listing kind of the keywords from the job posting that you also have. And of course, putting the most relevant skills. So what is the person going to be required to do the most of? Those should be right up top and put first so that the employer sees it first. But again, I would say maybe up to 5 lines of these skill words and attributes that the employer is looking for, pulled directly from the job posting that you also have. Bang, right up top. So now the employer is interested because in that top third, they're seeing you're in their field and you've got a lot of the skills that they're looking for. And then education, you could put your degree information, university, of course, location, your degrees. You want to highlight certain things like the degree name, perhaps, if you've done any relevant certificates. If you have any cool fellowships or awards, you might want to list them here. I wouldn't go too overboard, but if you have some unique awards or fellowships that are recognizing you for something unique, be sure to add maybe a short line that describes that you were selected for your leadership abilities or how selective that fellowship was, awarded to top 5% of students or whatever. So you might give a little description for some of these because fellowships or awards, because if the employer just reads those awards, they might not have any idea what that means. GPA you could include perhaps, or instead maybe academic honors that you received, leadership roles that you've had while in school, and maybe relevant courses. So you want to be careful this section doesn't get too long. Your goal is to have your experience section be the longest if possible. And in some cases, you might have some school projects that you actually put under your work experience to demonstrate that, so it's not kind of lost in the education section. So for that, you could put down as the employer name, like the university. Your job title could be like student researcher, perhaps. And then you would keep a similar format throughout, but listing location, dates that you worked this, and then kind of the tips for strong bullets. You should begin with a strong action verb that conveys the highest level of leadership accurately. So if you managed or led a project, say that versus participated or coordinated. And again, we've talked about this, but convey outcomes if possible, numbers where possible. and results where possible. And then, of course, using the resume customization tool that will ensure that all of your bullets are really addressing relevant skills that the employer is interested in. And at the bottom, you could have an additional section for things that don't fit in other sections, but are still relevant. So let's say maybe you are you're a member of a professional association that's relevant for the job. List that. That's impressive. It shows the employer that you really keep up on happenings in the field. Maybe there's other languages you speak to show your ability to work with diverse staff or partners, or maybe it's a global position that they would really value that. Another idea could be, this is optional, but I've seen this work really effectively, where you have one bullet that kind of outlines something different about yourself outside of work or academics that shows a personal aspect of yourself, but shows something that's intriguing and often can be something that an employer asks you about in an interview. It's a conversation starter. It shows a different aspect of yourself. So, for example, summited 3 mountains with elevations greater than 19,000 feet, or ran a half marathon without walking, or maybe you learned a unique culinary style of cooking or something like that. A few ideas. Moving on to cover letters, this is different, as we talked about. It's your opportunity to express why you are so interested in this employer and the specific position. That's a piece that employers are always trying to guess. You know, how is this a fit for this person? Why do they see themselves as a fit? Why are they so passionate about working for us? And if you can really convey that, that really makes you stand out as a candidate versus you know, what they often see are just a bunch of people applying for a lot of different positions, and maybe they have no idea why a candidate really wants to work there. And so they would often go for the person who shows that they're really a fit. Again, an opportunity in your cover letter to tell your career story if you're a career changer or have a work gap. Cover letters are a place to show the employer that you know what skills they're looking for in this job. You know, for the person to succeed in this job, you understand what it takes, and you are demonstrating that you've got those skills by giving very specific examples. So the cover letter template, this is also found under greencareeradvisor.com under my resources section. You can find this, but what do you put in here? We'll go through here kind of section by section. Again, the header should be similar to your resume header, so it has the same look. Name, contact information, maybe LinkedIn URL, for example. Date up top, underneath that, and then address is really optional. This takes up a lot of space. Often I say get rid of it, because your one-page resume, your one-page cover letter, that real estate on that one page is so precious, and so, you know, this would take up almost a whole paragraph perhaps. So often I say you don't need to do this formality, but then the next line, you would want to address it to the right person. So a tip would be, if possible, call or email in advance, way in advance of the application deadline, to try to see if you can get the name, the title, and the spelling of the hiring manager for that position. And if you are, you can address it to the right person. Sometimes an employer doesn't want to disclose that information. That's fine. If you're not able to get that information, dear hiring manager or dear hiring team is fine. Okay, now the actual body of the cover letter, what do you put in here? So that first paragraph, it's so important. You want the employer to get excited to read the rest of your application and be excited about your candidacy. So that first paragraph has to really catch them. Oftentimes, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've seen cover letters start off with, you know, I saw your position on your website. I think I'm highly qualified. You know, it's like what everyone says. The employer's sleeping, right? So what can you do to really stand out? One tip would be, I'm not advocating that you put all of these in here, but I'm going to go through a few examples of what are ways that you know, one way that you would pick out to stand out in the first paragraph of your cover letter. So number one, why are you passionate about working for this employer and this role? And maybe how does it fit in with your career goals? That would be amazing. I will give you an example. When I worked at National Wildlife Federation for the Lake Superior team, we were hiring for a position, and I still remember to this day, someone in their cover letter put down that they were so motivated to work on protecting Lake Superior and join our Lake Superior team because they grew up on, growing up, they had a family cottage on the shores of Lake Superior. So every summer they would spend either kayaking or swimming in Lake Superior, and they would be highly motivated to do the work. So that was very compelling as an example. Another example could be maybe you have several unique skill sets that are required for the job that maybe a lot of people wouldn't have that combination. So let's say the job calls for somebody who has strong writing skills, has a lot of community building experience, and can speak Spanish, right? That, you know, I think Spanish language, a number of people speak Spanish, but there'll be a lot of candidates who apply likely that don't speak Spanish. So you could say something like, I'd be thrilled to apply my strong writing skills, community building, and Spanish language skills in this role, and you would stand out. Another example could be, let's say you took time to do an informational interview with a staff member there, or you met a staff member at an event or conference. You could mention that. I recently spoke with, this happens to be a former National Wildlife Federation staff member who's now a professor at a college. So it could be, I recently spoke with Nataki Osborne-Jelks on your faculty about this role, and was even more inspired to apply for this position at Spelman College. So that would show the employer that you're so interested in the employer and the position that you took time to speak with an individual staff member, which not many people would do. So that would make you stand out. Another idea, lastly, if you can't think of anything else or none of those seem to resonate with you, let's say you could look up the organization's mission statement or research what is their general approach to working on climate change or whatever. So you could then, if that resonated with you, that's another idea of how you could tell an employer that you're so passionate about their mission and that it really aligns with your own. That's another example. Okay, now moving on kind of more of the body of the cover letter. So the important content, it's really important to organize your content. So typically I say maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs that are really your body paragraphs, kind of the meat of your cover letter. This is where you're going to be explaining the skill sets that you have that are relevant and highly desired by the employer, and examples of your achievements and work using these skill sets. And so that's really important. I guess I'm jumping ahead here. So I apologize. I just realized that I was still talking about the first paragraph. This is an example. If you're changing careers and you want to tell your story, here's a great example of how you might do that before we get into the body paragraph. So if you're changing careers and you want to tell your story, you might say something like this. Although my career path has taken a few turns, after deep reflection, I've decided to pursue a more meaningful career in the environmental field, and I'm currently pursuing a certificate in climate change policy. That's an example. The other example that I wanted to share with you, let's say you're returning to work after some sort of a break, and maybe you can tell your story to explain that. So if there's like a 2-year gap in your work history and you're feeling like you're often getting overlooked, you could say something like this. So in 2020, I took 2 years off to care for my elderly parents. During that time, I also found time to volunteer for a local food bank that supplied locally produced vegetables to low-income residents, and looking to continue my passion for working on food justice issues as I return to work. Now into the body paragraphs. So you want to be organized, and I would say pick out at least 2 or 3 of the top skills, and maybe up to 5 skills that you feel are really critical for this person to have to succeed in this role, and where you also feel you're strong in. So that's the first step. And then to really organize your paragraphs around those skill sets so that you would have 2 or 3 body paragraphs that really give examples of your abilities using these skills and successes that you've had. Okay, so again, in some cases, you might be able to give 1 or 2 examples of your experience using these skills. You would typically want to begin your paragraph by highlighting the skill that you're going to be talking about. So something like, I'd be thrilled to bring my strong community building skills to this role. And then you would roll into giving an example or 2 that demonstrate your use of these skills and highlighting again outcomes and accomplishments and numbers. So while serving as a community garden intern at Growing Hope, I expanded our program participation by 25% by reaching out to local churches, schools, community organizations, and leaders, as an example. So you would go through and do that, organize your paragraphs, again, 2 or 3 body paragraphs, starting with, here's the skill I'm going to be talking about, and then giving your examples of your outcomes and accomplishments for each of those. And then you would come to the closing paragraph after you've organized all of those body paragraphs. Here, it's just very simple, a very short paragraph reiterating your interest in the position and the company, and then maybe relevant skills that you have for the position, and then maybe suggesting an action like, please interview me. So it could look like this. This role is a perfect match for my interest in working on food justice issues and would allow me to apply my strong community building, Spanish language, and project coordination skills to your team's work. I look forward to the opportunity to speak with you further about how my skills and experience can take the company's work to the next level. A few tips on what not to include. Always be positive in your cover letters. If you've had a bad experience, cover letter is not a place to share those. Always keep your stories positive. If there's anything too personal, don't include that in there. Acronyms, technical jargon, even though people in the field might be reading this, there may be other team members of the organization who don't understand those acronyms, and you might alienate them if you're using a lot of those in your cover letter. And then, of course, try to cut out things that are not relevant to the job to keep your cover letter short. Next, I want to switch to leveraging your network. So yes, so we've gone through a lot of information on, how to make an excellent resume and cover letter, but the other piece that a lot of people might not talk to you about is that it's so important to be able to understand how to leverage your professional network when you are applying for jobs at a company. Let's say you know someone, or you know somebody who knows somebody who works at that organization. That's when you can leverage those people to perhaps be helpful to you. So first tip is you have to know who to leverage in your network. And I would say the answer to that would be anyone whose opinion would be highly respected by that employer. So let's say the obvious ones are current staff or board members, or maybe past board or staff members of that organization. Maybe an intern. So if you're a student and you know another student who interned there, that could be a great ally or a person that you could leverage, or somebody who interned there in the past. It could be maybe staff at a partner organization. Maybe this nonprofit that you're targeting often works with another nonprofit, and you know that, and you know somebody at that other nonprofit. That's somebody you could leverage. Maybe a professor of yours who's done some research or collaboration with that organization might be someone you could leverage. And then, thinking more broadly, maybe personal contacts. I hear all the time people say, oh, my aunt works for this company, but I didn't think to ask her, or whatever, right? But friends, family, contacts, personal connections may be helpful here. Second tip for leveraging your network is knowing when to leverage your network in the job search. So I will just say quickly, anytime there is a decision point. So one could be when you apply to a job, that's a decision point. The employer is going to have to look through all these applications and decide who stands out, right? And who are the people we're going to bring in for initial phone screening interviews, perhaps. And so that's a decision-making point. So if you have the opportunity to leverage someone in your network and get them to put in a good word for you, or encourage the hiring manager to take a look at your application, that's going to make you stand out. So the way you could do this is reach out to the person in your network who you think can make a difference. Send them a copy of your application, resume, cover letter, a link to the job posting so they know exactly what the position's about and how you framed yourself, and ask them if they'd be willing to take if they'd be willing to encourage the hiring manager to take a look at your application. So this is not a heavy lift ask. It's just asking them, would they be willing to encourage the hiring manager to look at your application. So this is a perfect ask for somebody maybe you've talked to, maybe only once or twice, but you know they wouldn't feel confident recommending you as a candidate. That's a great ask. If you happen to know someone very well, your aunt or somebody you worked with on a project team or whatever, you know them well, that's a person you could ask for something even more to see if they might be willing to write an email or make a phone call to recommend you for a specific role. Another time decision point could be, let's say you've already applied, now you've been selected for an interview. You know, now they're going to have to make a decision once the interviews conclude, who goes on to the next round, or who, you know, if it's the end of the round, you know, who are we going to pick to be the candidate for this position? So that's another decision-making point where you could reach out to your connections and they can make a difference. So that's all for my presentation. I wanted to list my contact information. I'm going to open it up for questions here in a second, but please visit my website. Feel free to reach out to me on email. Would love to have all of you connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm very happy to connect you with people in my network. And then if I can be helpful to you in your job search, certainly reach out. That's what I do. If you go to my website, greencareeradvisor.com, at the top of any of my pages, there's a little form to fill out to tell me more about yourself and how I can help. And then even schedule from that form, you can schedule a free 30-minute session to talk with me to kind of share what your struggles are, and then we can discuss how my services might be able to help. And I will say that as a partner with National Wildlife Federation, I offer a 10% discount to anyone coming into me through this conference. So be sure to specify that you know you heard me at this conference, or you participated in this conference. So let me finish there, and I'll see if I can take any questions. I'll leave the screen up, I guess.
Sounds good. Lisa, yes, thank you so much for this fantastic presentation.
Yeah.
And we do have 2 questions. I've gotten 2 questions. And one is, you mentioned avoiding fancy fonts and making sure to include keywords. Do you have any other recommendations for dealing with job applicant screening systems?
Just what I've said already. I think the importance of the keywords, that's huge, because that's kind of what they're screening on. So you need to have those keywords throughout your resume, maybe in that skills section up at the top, and sprinkled throughout your bullets as well. And maybe putting them both into, like, if there's an acronym form, like I mentioned GIS earlier, but also writing it out as well, so that you don't accidentally get left out. You know, maybe they're looking for both of those keywords.
One of the things that I've heard recommended, and I'm not quite sure how to feel about it, that some people have recommended kind of copying and pasting the entire job listing and putting it in like white font or like one size font somewhere to try to trick those systems. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's creative. I haven't really, given that any thought, but I think if you use that in my template where I have the skills summary section, that's kind of the same thing. You're taking all of, you don't want to mislead them either. So like if you just take that whole thing and you're including skill sets that you don't have, that's misleading, right? But I would say using the template, and if you have a skill summary up top with 3, 4, 5 lines of key skill words that you also have, that's a great way to really beat the system.
Yeah. Another question that we got for some jobs, mostly more creative or artistic ones, you sometimes hear, or actually I can add, sometimes you see on the news, I saw one recently, but you hear about folks who have done like really artistic or even like digital only resumes. How do you know whether you should try to go out of the box with a particular position or stick to the tried and true?
Yeah, I would say you might have like the traditional resume like we've talked about here, but you could certainly in your contact section have a link to your website. I would encourage this for a lot of the creative types. If you have a portfolio of works, digital works, whatever, work samples, create a simple website where you put all of that information, and then you can link it on your resume and on your LinkedIn profile as well, so that the employer can easily see more examples of your work and your creative side. I've worked also with landscape architects, right? So while at University of Michigan, and the portfolio was even more important, right, than the resume or anything else. They wanted to see what are your design capabilities. And so the digital portfolio is critical. So many of them would have this traditional resume, but really link, their portfolio on there so that employers could easily see that. And that's what they're looking for. I've also had creative types where I worked with a client who did a lot of writing and communications work, and she set up a website and listed a lot of the works that she had, so you could see reports that, public reports that she had written up and things like that, or speeches maybe she wrote, podcasts, whatever. So it was a really nice way to showcase a lot of her communications experience and portfolio. So good question.
Awesome. And LinkedIn has become such a great place to kind of store all of those extra pieces in one place, and then link there, like you mentioned, put the link to your LinkedIn on your resume or cover letter. I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment, and I will have to jump off to get the next session, the last session started. But I do want to thank you, Lisa, for your time today for this presentation. A lot of really great information for folks who either are in the job search and application process right now, or are planning to be and want to be more prepared as they get to it.
Yes, well, thank you. It was a pleasure to be here, and I hope many of you will connect with me on LinkedIn and keep in touch.
Take care.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.